In this episode of OG 55, I got Mr. Seymour Duck and the Italiano with me today. We're talking about Comcast earnings from the other day because literally nobody else is talking about this. Nobody else. I don't know why. Maybe because the numbers weren't that great, so people are just avoiding it. I don't know, but we're not going to avoid it. We're going to talk about it. We're also going to discuss Ike Perlmutter selling all of his Disney shares. We're going to dive into that as well. Up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG 55. We're talking all about the Comcast earnings, theme parks, studio, what happened with Comcast. We're also going to talk about Ike Perlmutter selling all of his shares for Disney. Crazy stuff happening. But before we dive in, I got Mr. Sticky Icky over here, the Italiano. George, welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me back on. And speaking of Sticky, this is definitely going to be two interesting topics, to say the least. And as you said, no one's talking about either one of them. So knock, knock, knock. Who's at the door? We are, because we're going to talk about it.
There you go, George. If you let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. Also, you can find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There we go. I'm going to play a sticky drop, but I actually ended up, we got a comment actually. And the guy, he was cool. He was really cool about it. He's like, I like the sticky drop, but every time it plays, it blows my ears out. So it's like really loud. So I have a new and improved sticky drop. I lowered the volume. Hopefully it's not as crazy. Here we go. Mr. Sticky Icky. There we go. Hopefully that's a little better. Hopefully. We'll see.
I honestly wouldn't know because whether it's really loud or really low, I'm not really listening to the music.
Right? You're focused on the visuals, right, George? Absolutely. I can understand that. All right. Oh, you know what? What am I doing here? Hold on, everybody. Hold the phone. I forgot to introduce Mr. Seymour Duck. Seymour.
Hello.
Sorry, the sticky drop, it distracted me.
See what it does to you?
You know what I'm saying? Mr. Duck, it's always good to have you on, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm glad to nerd out with you guys with the numbers for Comcast. Even though on X is silent. Tumbleweeds.
Tumbleweeds. You can hear a mouse piss on a cotton ball. It's so quiet. Nobody's talking about it. Mr. Seymour Duck, if you could let everybody home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
And make sure you follow this guy. He does great insight on Nintendo, a lot of Nintendo stuff. And he's been looking for somebody to debate in regards to Nintendo. So if you're into Nintendo, you want to debate, Seymour's your guy. Make sure you
and
follow
also a lot in Cover Corp and Hollow Live.
Yes, absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely. And Disney, all of that good stuff. So make sure you follow him on X. He is family here at OG55. All right, here we go. Let's rock and roll, guys. Oh, wow. Here we go. Okay. So Comcast revenue misses dragged down by parks and the studios. Okay. So it says here, Comcast reported second quarter revenue that missed analyst expectations, dragged down by a slower season at its movie studios and theme parks. It says here, revenue fell 2.7% to $29.7 billion. The company said in a statement, missing the $30 billion average of analyst projections. Revenue from studios tumbled 27%, while sales at theme parks fell 11%. So we're going to start with theme parks real quick. And it says here, revenue from the parks division fell $1.9 billion, missing the $2.21 billion seen by analysts. Okay. Now it says here the film and television division reported a $2.2 billion in sales compared to the estimate of 2.5. Comcast shares were down 2.2%. Okay. It even dragged down Disney. It says here that shares of Disney were down 3% based on the news. So I'll start with you, Mr. Seymour Duck. What are your thoughts on this quarter in terms of the parks division taking a good sized tumble here with 11%? What are your thoughts, brother?
It's not good because the parks is supposed to be the growth of the company. The parks and the media side because, well, media aside for Peacock, but the theme parks is supposed to be the one because currently they're the number one revenue source for Comcast. 55% is like TV and internet and wireless. Even though wireless is third party from Verizon, I don't really count that, but it's just licensing rights. But that is dramatically going down. Internet's still, on pace, but people are moving to 5G. But TV, nobody's watching TV. They're all moving like IPTV and cable. Nobody watches that anymore. They go to streaming, right? They go on Netflix, YouTube, Disney Plus, Hulu. Barely anyone's on Peacock in comparison, right? They're at the bottom of the list for at least, they're at the bottom of the list for worldwide numbers. So when I look at theme parks, right now, because of the drop, it only represents 6.8% of the total revenue. That's not good because it needs to generate that growth from revenue for the parks, and it's not happening.
Right. And I'm hearing all these excuses, Seymour. I'm seeing all these excuses where it's like, people are saying like, well, it's because people are holding off on their vacations because Epic Universe is coming out in 2025. And that's interesting because our good friend Alia Aloha, friend of the channel, she's awesome. She brought this to my attention a little while ago, and I want to bring it up to you guys. This is Google trending, right? The red line is Walt Disney World and the blue line is Epic Universe, okay? So you can see normie interest in Epic Universe right now. Now, keep in mind, right now, Universal hasn't gone full bore with the marketing yet. Right now, the normies aren't even looking for it on Google. They're not even searching Epic Universe.
It basically looks like one person viewed it, and then that was it.
Right. This is where that one guy viewed it, right? That one day, right? But it's like this excuse that like, oh, well, it's because everyone's holding off on vacations because of Epic Universe. Really? That's why so many people are looking into it. It's not even it's barely showing up on Google. It's not that. It's not that. And the other thing that really annoys me is every time Disney has a quarter where they lose ground on their theme parks, all the people come out of the woodwork with like, they have to like, do an autopsy on what's going on at Disney. Were they too woke? Or did the brand damage finally kick in? Did all this other stuff. But Universal has a quarter like this, which isn't great. Let's be honest. It wasn't a great quarter. And everything else is blamed under the sun, right? It's, oh, well, they're just waiting for Epic Universe. And, oh, well, the economy. And look, the economy, that could be part of it. Absolutely. But where are all the conversations, like you hear when it comes to Disney, about what Universal might be doing wrong?
Well, speaking of autopsy, if that blue line was somebody's EKG, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what just kind of frustrates me. It's like there's all these excuses being made. It's clearly not because of Epic Universe. There's just not enough normie interest right now. Normies aren't even aware of it. I talk to my coworkers all the time who are normies, ask them about the stuff. Nobody even knows what Epic Universe is yet. It's not really on the normie radar. That is not what's keeping people away. Now, I will say this too. I do think that the revenge travel, as they were calling it, after COVID, that is starting to peter out. Okay, go ahead, Seymour.
I was gonna say, and also interest rates are like at its highest right now, and right now for domestically, compared to let's say in Japan, it's at its lowest. So if somebody like myself want to go to Universal Japan, I'll pay a quarter of the price instead of going Universal in Florida.
Interesting.
Just because of the exchange rate of the yen has dropped significantly.
Yeah, and everything's better in Japan anyway, so it's well worth it. It's totally worth it, especially for you, Seymour, because you like a lot of the Nintendo stuff, and they got way more of that out there than we do out here. What say you, George, Italiana? What are your thoughts on these numbers? And all that good stuff.
Well, and I think it's also interesting that a lot of people would say, okay, well, Epic Universe really isn't promoting or marketing, with Epic Universe and what have you. But here's the thing, Universal is, they are releasing those videos online where it kind of takes you like through the ins and outs. They just released their kind of like preview center where they're showing the models of everything. So people are seeing it, but it's just how are people really interested in it?
See, that's interesting, George, because I was kind of giving them a little bit of like, in a way, I was kind of giving them a little bit of a pass, right? I was saying, well, the marketing hasn't really kicked in yet, right?
Right.
You're saying you're kind of saying the opposite. You're saying, look, the marketing has kicked in. They're doing these commercials, basically these little clips for each land. They got the big model and the preview center over at the park. And you're saying they're still barely trending on Google and stuff.
I just think personally, I think it's going to be great, but I think it's going to be within our community, in our domain. I don't really know how much really a normie is really going to care in the sense, because for me, and as I said, I want to see Epic Universe. I'm very excited for it. I'm very curious about it. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's just an updated technological version of Islands of Adventure. And for me, I just don't know how much of a publicity that needs to be put forth over Disney that it would get enough of that needle to move, so to speak, of what you've shown with the numbers. And also on top of it, Universal shot themselves in the foot when they released, sort of without actually releasing, those ridiculous ticket offers that you have to spend 3 extra days just to get 1 day at Epic Universe.
Yes, because they're worried about cannibalization. And we've been talking about that here on the channel. We were told, you're crazy, man. That's not going to happen. People are just going to go to all 3, and it's going to take away from Disney, right? And that's a possibility, but clearly Universal is more on our mentality that it's going to cannibalize. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Another thing, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but this is actually from, ironically enough, CNBC, but I do want to quote this. It says here, Comcast acknowledged making fewer investments in new Florida attractions ahead of the opening of the new park Epic Universe in 2025, adding that played a role in declining attendance. So Universal right now is admitting on their earnings call that they haven't invested enough. And this is why I'm bringing this up, George. It does relate to the cannibalization thing. When we did a video with Slimer and Michael Ebba like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said in that video, they haven't really invested in those 2 parks. And now they're panicking sort of with this ticket deal and forcing people into a 3-day ticket deal because they know it's going to cannibalize the shit out of the other 2 parks because they haven't done anything for these parks. And, Diagon Alley is a decade ago. Mm-hmm. And DreamWorks Land is not it. Come on, let's be honest. You know what I'm saying? It looks pretty cheap. They got the Villain Con thing. But real quick, George, before I go to you, I want to play that clip. This is from a few weeks ago with Slimer and Ebba. Here we go. Basically, OG was saying the same thing that Comcast is saying right now. Look, you want to address the cannibalization, but this isn't the right way to do it. In my opinion, they've dropped the ball. I mean, it's like the other 2 parks haven't really gotten major investments in a long time. Diagon Alley is a decade old now. We have this DreamWorks Land that just opened over at Universal Studios that looked like it cost about $35 to build, okay? And the Villain Con thing, I mean, and then that's why they're so concerned about this cannibalization. They haven't invested seriously in the other 2 parks in a long time. Exactly. And that's really what you're seeing here.
I just have to say that was freaky because I looked exactly the way that I look right now. The hair, the beard, everything. It was like an absolute mirror. But yes, absolutely kind of off of that. But yeah, it's you've been saying it and now actually coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Universal is actually admitting to the fact. And this is why I say, and I will repeat it, this is why Disney cannot, will not, and should not build a 5th gate at Walt Disney World right now, because this is the same crap that they would be dealing with, that Universal's dealing with. Oh, how is Disney going to respond to Epic Universe? This isn't it, because look what it's doing. Universal should have focused on the first 2 parks, the studios and IOA first, before even touching ground on Epic Universe.
Well, and that's what I don't understand, George. We're in the theme park community in a big way, right? And every time you bring up a 3rd park for Disneyland, fans say, well, we shouldn't worry about a 3rd park yet, not until we fix Tomorrowland, not until we plus out DCA, and then we can add a 3rd park. But for some reason, IOA and Universal Studios Park, they have all kinds of issues, stuff that needs to be done. Okay, they haven't invested enough. And fans are like, yeah, Epic Universe. It's like, well, wait a minute. I thought that we should maybe work on the existing stuff first, get those kind of up and running as best we can. You know what I'm saying? Have it running on all cylinders and then add to the equation. It doesn't seem like Universal did that.
I feel like it's a mentality kind of thing, because I bet you if Universal Hollywood were to get a 2nd gate, then they'd be like, oh, yep, well, now Disneyland needs that third gate. So it's almost like when one
reactive.
Yeah, it's reactive. It's like if one studio does a park, okay, that's how you have to retract from it with the other one. You have to answer back with another park. And it's like that's not always the case. Now, really quick before moving on to Seymour, speaking of the numbers, and again, this is why, Disney's even seeing a slump. It's happening with all the companies. I'm so sick and tired of them just saying, okay, Disney, doom and gloom, Disney's failing, the Masas is crumbling. Well, look at the numbers with Universal, because it's happening, the same notion. It's not just one, it's all.
It is. And not to say Universal has handled things perfectly, because like I said, I do think they could have invested in the existing parks more in the past decade or so, right? But you're right, though. And that's what I'm talking about. When every time Disney has any kind of blip with the theme parks in an earnings call, everyone comes out of the woodwork to sort of like diagnose the problem. Oh, well, was it Genie Plus? Did they go too woke this time? Is there all kinds of brand damage now, or what happened? Why are people abandoning Disney? And it's like, well, why not Universal? How come when they have this, we don't hear the same kind of analysis? Go ahead, Seymour.
No, I actually wanted to talk about that because I don't know how much of a revenue growth Epic Universe is gonna be for Universal to overtake Disney, because right now the theme parks for Universal, all of it, theme parks and experience, only generates per quarter, at least the latest one, 1.9 billion. And then we have domestic in experiences, that's including the cruises, 5.6 billion. And that was their last quarter. I know it's not a one-to-one comparison because we still don't have the current Disney numbers, but I mean, like, that's a long way to go. It's just to compete with Disney on a domestic level, yet their worldwide numbers only 1.9. I don't know how much it's gonna take away from Disney. And when even looking at Disney, they also had a decrease in domestic,
right,
with lower attendance. Yeah, they both did. Last quarter too, Comcast, same thing with Universal, lower. It's an industry issue right now, and I like I said, it could be because of interest rates are at the highest right now for the U.S. and people are now going to Japan, and Japan right now at the lowest yen they have ever been. People rather go to other places compared to domestically, and that's why you're seeing that little bit drop off. But this is dramatic, 10.6% for Universal going down, and then you have to add Epic Universe to bring that back up. I don't know. It's not going to be the cherry on top everyone thinks it is when they compete with Disney. 5.6 billion just for domestic. That's not including the 1.2 for international and then the 9 for consumer products. Like, that's Disney is a monster compared to Universal in these numbers.
No, absolutely. It is. It's a beast. It's an absolute beast. And here's the thing too. You're absolutely right, Seymour, too. I like what you talk about when you say context, right? Like, it kind of is an industry-wide thing. This is steeper than it probably should be, but you're right. Overall, these things are very industry-wide. We talk a lot about it even here on the studio side, and we're going to bring up studio in a little bit. But like, and you've talked about a lot on X, Seymour, to your credit, where people look at things with like tunnel vision, right? Where it's like, even today we saw it on X, right? Where it's like Disney's stock, is down, and it's like, but no one looks at the bigger picture. Then no one zooms out. Well, yeah, but Warner Brothers is down, Paramount is down, even Comcast is down. You have to look at all these factors. I know people think it's like, well, you're making excuses for Disney. You're not making excuses. You have to look at the whole thing to know what the problem is, to diagnose the issue. If everything was up, right, and Disney was the only one going down, then you can make the case like Disney's doing something that's impacting their business. When all the studios are down except for Netflix, it tells you it's indicative of a bigger industry issue. But no one wants to really talk about that, and that's why we bring up the Comcast stuff, because without these numbers and without the context of how Universal's doing, when Disney has their earnings call and they go down, you're not going to get a full understanding of what the true story is.
And I remember on X being called out because I mentioned it at like the first time I ever went on your show. Somebody was telling me, how dare you say Universal Parks generate smaller revenue compared to Disney? But then they don't want to put the numbers together. They don't want to show it. If you put it side by side and add the context, it's a completely different story than if you just separate them and only talk about Disney.
Yeah, no, well said.
And like, yeah, Comcast earnings were weak and nobody wanted to talk about it. The stock went down 6% because of that reaction. And then it went back up because somebody on the Disney side sold. So they thought that was actually positive for Comcast. So then they bought it back up because they think that's, yeah. Anyways, in the short term, the stock price doesn't even matter because if you don't provide the actual fundamentals of what's happening within the company, you don't have the context of why the stock is going down. Most of it is sentimental. It's not actually how well the company is doing. Sometimes they think the company's not going to do well in the future. Sometimes it's just people selling, which we will talk later on. But yeah, it's not just stock price. You have to look into it, and people don't want to give you that context. They don't want to give you, a side by side comparison. Nobody ever wants to talk about Warner Brothers. Yet that stock is doing really terrible, right? And they're going to court. And they're fighting off to get the NBA rights because the NBA wants to get Amazon. They signed with Amazon, but Warner Brothers is like, no, we need those rights. So we're going to court, like all these issues, but nobody wants to talk about that. They just want to talk about Disney because it's easy to pick at. And the only specific issues with Disney. They never want to talk about the whole company, right? Even though that's what's great about Disney is that, the flywheel. It's like, oh, the movies are doing great now. No, let's not talk about that. Oh, streaming is profitable. Oh, let's not talk about that. Let's look at the theme parks when they're a little bit weaker domestically, so that we can talk about that.
Yeah, no, it's laser focused on whatever division is having a bit of a problem. That's going to get the media play, basically, right? You never hear anything about Inside Out 2, right? Of course not. That movie's doing too well. What say you, Italiano? Before we move on to studio, any thoughts on the theme park stuff before we move on to studio?
Yeah, I feel like it's just one of those things that we just have to kind of wait in the wings and see how it progresses down. But I just feel like, as Seymour was saying, it's just like one big contradiction. It's like, again, I always say this too: what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So it's like you can't just put a microscope under one company and then just kind of have like the other one foreshadowed. Like it doesn't matter, when push comes to shove, but when there's positivity for that other studio, speaking of Universal, it's like, oh, well, Disney got to live up to those standards. Well,
Right.
It's like, well, you didn't mention it about when they're failing, so it's
no,
like,
you don't. You only hear about Universal when it's something that's good that you can use as a catalyst to crap on Disney, right? So it's like, oh, see Universal doing this amazing thing over here. So, Disney, what's your response going to be, Disney? But when Universal takes a tumble like it did in its earnings call, nobody talks about it. Universal is only about trying to make the ex-girlfriend Disney jelly. Okay, so we only talk about it when we're trying to make Disney. We're trying to see Disney, see how good they're doing. It's that kind of mentality. It's really ridiculous. But if you really want to get a true, honest assessment of what's going on with the Disney and the whole situation, you have to look at the whole situation. If you have that tunnel vision, you're dead in the water. You're absolutely dead in the water. So, all right, let's move on to studio. Okay, so
just one more thing I wanted
Sure.
to say. So we talked about the biggest business sector for Comcast, which is residential connectivity and platforms. The TV and all, and the wireless, and the TV, the internet. Just wanted to state that it's down 1.5% year over year in revenue, but then it's up 1.1% because they increased prices. But I mean, that's 55% of your revenue, and it's going down. That's not a good sign. When all the other sectors that's supposed to be for growth, it's going down as well. Everything's going down. That's not good. The only thing that's been going up is Peacock. And that's a tiny sector of the company that's going up. Overall, it's not looking good.
Fascinating. Yes, it's wild, man. It's wild. Well, it says on the film side, after having two of last year's highest grossing films with the Super Mario Brothers movie and Fast X, Comcast Universal Studios didn't have a blockbuster to compare with those in the last quarter. It says here the company's hold on one sec. Give me just a second here. Give me just a second here. I just wanted to kind of go down a little bit and talk a little bit about. Okay, Comcast also has rights to the NBA playoff games and 6 conference finals series over the course of the deal, Kavanaugh said, as well as 50 games exclusively for Peacock, which NBC is pushing as a major sports streaming platform ahead of the Olympics. Comcast will also have rights to more than 50 women's NBA games. Okay.
I wanted to comment on that.
Yeah.
The streaming rights.
Sure.
I think I don't like that decision to put those sports at no extra cost on Peacock. That's a loss leader. You are essentially telling people, "Oh, we're going to spend so much money on it, just so you can come on this platform at no extra cost." Where Disney has ESPN, right? They have a separate service. Here, they're doing it for free, and it's not the smartest decision because they're getting desperate with the subscriber numbers, and they need to grow. And I don't, at a certain point, that's going to stop. And then what are you going to offer after that? You just waste so much money on sports. I do not like that idea. They're offering free sports, business-wise, with the numbers, right? I mean, as a consumer, great, because free sports. Yeah. But I mean, as a business side, we're looking at the numbers. I do not like that at all because at a certain point, you have to give something,
right,
to bring those numbers up.
Right, and then once people get kind of conditioned for it to be, like you say, free, the minute they have to start charging for it, it's going to be even a bigger issue. Yeah. Fans are going to be like, "What's going on? This was free the whole time."
And Peacock right now is not profitable, and now you're adding sports to the mix. That takes it even further down to make it even more profitable. And Disney had that issue. Now they are profitable, and there's a reason why they're doing sports separate, because it's very expensive to do sports. Even Warner Brothers couldn't do it, and they're going to court for it to get it back from Amazon. But still, it's very expensive.
Interesting. Now, Seymour, before I move to George, I want to get your thoughts on last year. They had Mario Brothers movie, which is a movie that you and I both really loved. I think, George, you liked it. You didn't love it, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yes. But yeah, I mean, I fell in love with that movie, but that was obviously very successful.
Yeah.
This year, Universal it says here they didn't really have the same situation with their movies. What are your thoughts on that in terms of year to year?
I like how they mentioned Fast X, but then forgot about mentioning the budget of 350 billion. I mean, million. So like, oh yeah, we generated 700 million, but profit, and then you have to divide that, right, with the movie theaters, and yet you didn't mention that it was 350 million in the price of the movie, right? Like the budget was really high. Mario was only 100 million, so that makes more sense to bring that up. But I find that ironic that they brought in Fast X when everyone said that was a failure.
Yeah, that was interesting that they brought. I'm surprised they did, because you're right. The budget was so bad with that. The budget was so high with that movie that it wasn't like a huge hit. I mean, in terms of profit margin, at least. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's kind of crazy. Mario was a hit on every metric, but yeah, Fast X, that was weird. That was really strange. But they could, I guess, this year. I mean, their slate hasn't been as strong as last year, so they went down. Go ahead.
I think this is the year for Disney, and I don't think any other studio can compete. Mm-hmm. They've been moved. Even Universal moved their movie Wicked because they knew they were going to compete with Moana, and they didn't want that.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you that movie.
No, go ahead, FG.
No, I'll just say Wicked. I mean, look, there's an audience for Wicked, absolutely, but it's not messing with Moana. I mean, Moana is an absolute beast. It does beast mode numbers on the platform. This is a massive franchise. That movie, Moana 2, is going to be $1 billion movie.
Well, and I love how when people said, Wicked got moved, to kind of, give Moana a shot, I'm sorry. I think it's the other way around. Strike it, reverse it, But again, nothing against Wicked. I do love the Broadway show, but I mean, as far as the movie goes, I don't know exactly how I would like it, but I mean, it probably will bring in numbers, but I don't think nothing in compared to Moana. No. And to kind of echo Seymour's statement, I actually had this conversation with Mr. Michael Webber earlier that this is definitely Disney's comeback year for the theater and the studios for sure. We've seen it with Inside Out 2 for Pixar. We're about to see it this upcoming weekend with Deadpool and Wolverine from Marvel, which already people are stating that this is definitely Marvel's comeback, and they said this hasn't been as strong of a film since Endgame. So
and you have a bold prediction, and I want to repeat it because honestly, it could happen. But let the audience know what your prediction is for Deadpool in case people have missed it. In case it happens, because you're gonna have the victory lap to end all victory laps if this actually happens, and it's a possibility. It's a possibility.
Right. Yeah, it's a possibility. I don't know how big of a possibility, but I don't know. Just something about this movie. I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is, and I think that Deadpool and Wolverine could potentially become the first billion-dollar film just domestically. I know I don't want to say for a fact because we really don't know, but I could definitely see it crossing 2 billion. But I feel like that one worldwide, yes, excuse me, 2 billion worldwide. But one of those billions, I feel like, is just going to be domestically.
Yeah, and I'm a little less bullish on it than you are, just because of that rated R. It is sort of a barrier to entry for a lot of. No, I don't know about a lot, but I mean, it's going to restrict at least some of the potential audience. You know what I'm saying?
Do you also think too that it was kind of Disney's kind of strategy to then put Deadpool into the parks, because Disney confirmed that he's going to stay rated G as far as in the parks go, but then that also kind of puts that notion of like where kids would say to their parents, "Oh, who is that character?" And now I'm not talking about the little kids. I'm talking about like maybe like getting
15,
into the 15 or something, and it's like, oh, that's Deadpool and everything. So I wonder if it strikes up the conversation between parent and child to say,
yeah,
can you? Because I think kids today really, I don't really think there's any rated.
With the internet and what they have access to, you're saying, yeah.
I think honestly, kids see way more worse than what we would probably see on Deadpool and Wolverine.
Well, way worse than we did as kids. I mean, the internet was coming up when I was a kid, but it wasn't like it is today. I mean, it was literally AOL, dial-up, when I was that age.
Plus, if a movie is rated R, it's up to the parents if they want the kids to see the movie. Correct?
Right. Correct.
Which I think it should be the case. But yeah, it's when you're So when you have Deadpool at the parks, and the kids are asking the parents, "Who's Deadpool?" and they ask more questions, and then they nag, like, "Can I see Deadpool in the movie theaters?" and then they go see the movie.
Right, exactly. You might be onto something with that, George. You might be onto something with that. You put him in the parks. He's G-rated there. It kind of forces the conversation with the parents. And see, now, to play devil's advocate, that is one of the issues that I think that people that don't support Deadpool in the parks, I think that's one of the issues that they might have been having with this decision, because it does open up that can of worms. It kind of does put parents in a position now. Like, you see this character at DCA, and now you're like, now I have to have that conversation with my kid. You know what I'm saying? Because now my kid's asking, well, who's that? Or,
I mean, come on. You gave them the internet. You have TikTok. There's a lot of porn on the internet. I think Deadpool is fine at the parks.
And also too, and even me as a parent, it don't judge or anything. That's just like, I'm actually taking my son to go see it on Saturday. He is almost 15 now. Yeah. So he's seen the first two. As I said, he's still fine. He's not traumatized.
He's a good kid. I can vouch. He's a good kid.
Thank you. Appreciate it, bro. And yeah, I mean, he plays all sorts of video games and everything, and there's like ass, blood, and guts everywhere. So it's just like, I think he'll survive through another Deadpool movie.
Ass, blood, and guts. That's interesting. That's an interesting combo there, George. That's pretty wild. Wow. That's pretty wild. But it's interesting with these numbers, right? Because last year they did have a banger year. Oppenheimer was Universal, I believe, too, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, those are like their top tier movies with Mario and Oppenheimer.
Yeah, so they were killing it last year. Now this year they're not killing it as much, But here's the thing, because a lot of people will tell you, well, last year was like a banger year for Universal, with Super Mario and what have you. The thing though with these studios is that you have to you can't depend on Mario forever. You know what I'm saying? You have to have these. You have to have at least you have to have successful movies every single year, right? So while this year might not be terrible, it certainly isn't as successful as it could have been. I understand Mario is huge, but when you're a studio, you want to have the equivalent every year, and it doesn't seem like they're really doing that this year. So it's fascinating. But Seymour,
also, I just wanted to state one thing.
Yeah.
In comparison to Disney, right? When Disney was having that off year in 2023, they at least had the streaming service to bounce off. So when people were watching things, right, their revenues were growing and now they're profitable. In Comcast's case, it's not happening with Peacock as much as what Disney is. So they don't have that counterpart. They don't have that successful flywheel yet, like Disney does, where they can count on streaming when the movies are not doing as well. I just wanted to emphasize that.
That's a great point that you bring up. That's a fantastic
Because
point, actually.
because right now, right, the Super Mario Brothers is on Netflix, and it's making numbers on Netflix. It doesn't have Peacock numbers.
That's true.
Really quick before we go to the next topic, question for the both of you.
Sure.
Since we were kind of talking about studio and box office and everything, as we all pretty much agree, it seems like this is, Disney's year, Inside Out 2, Pixar, Deadpool,
Moana.
Wolverine, Marvel, Moana, Disney Animation, and I would even say possibly Mufasa for Disney live action. We
Maybe.
don't really know.
I mean, you look at the live action of the original one, the first one, right? I mean, like, some people still call it an animated movie, even though they call it live. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. It's animated or is it live action?
I say live action because that's like what it was like titled, but I more so just say like CGI.
I know. Yeah. So I know a lot of like Disney fans don't like that movie, but yet a lot of the normies do. And they went out and saw it, and it's the biggest one they ever made, if you count it as animated.
Right. Yeah, it did very well. It did very, very well. Absolutely.
So my question to you both is, with Kathleen Kennedy with Star Wars and Lucasfilm, she kind of fell under the radar because all the intricacies of the studios were kind of under par. But now that all the Marvel, Disney Animation, Pixar, they're now kind of lifting up now, does that now put a spotlight on her to say, okay, well, the needle's moving for everybody else, but here we are at Lucasfilm still waiting in the wings?
Well, here's the thing with that, though. No, I can see that. I can see that. Absolutely. If all the other studios are going up and then Lucasfilm, yeah, absolutely. But the issue is, like, even though like the Acolyte wasn't like super well received, from what I understand, and Seymour, correct me if I'm wrong, the numbers have been pretty decent, no? If I'm not mistaken.
Pretty decent for a movie that's everyone on X is saying it's terrible. If it keeps showing up on the Nielsen charts for Disney Plus in North America, right? That's pretty tremendous because you're competing with Netflix, and and Disney Plus in the US is only 2/3 of the subscribers they have of Netflix. So you have less number of subscribers to boost those numbers up. So when you're seeing those numbers, plus the Acolyte is a weekly show compared to Netflix, which is a binge show. So you're in Amazon too, right? A lot of the times it's sometimes they do all of it, sometimes it's weekly, but you're competing those shows at another level. And for Disney Plus to go on there for a weekly show, that's like only 30 minutes. That's tremendous.
Yeah, no, well said. Well said. Yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't put that into consideration because, context is for beta pixie duster, you know what I'm saying? It's like nobody wants to put the context in there, you know what I'm saying? But it matters. And perfect example, Seymour, of why the context matters. When you have the binging approach and you have the weekly approach, you got to analyze the numbers differently. What say you, George?
Yeah, that is really true. I mean, there are two different ways of how you can watch something on a streaming service, and that's how it would actually showcase those numbers. That if it's on a consistent watch and rewatch, in multiple households with the binge watching, but then as with like a weekly, it's like you watch it, okay, needle goes up, okay, pivots a little, okay, next episode. So it will showcase itself in a different format depending on if you're binge watching or weekly watching.
And another thing I wanted to point out, because now you can actually do this with an apples to apples comparison. When Disney releases an original or a movie on Disney Plus, it's always number one for the movie section. Wish, Elemental, and the new one that just came out, the original one for Disney Plus, number 4. I forget the name already, but
Descendants.
Yeah,
Descendants.
number 1, and it's an original. And like I mentioned, number 1 for the movies, because you can actually compare it with the movies to Netflix because it's a 1-to-1. You're not doing a weekly. You're not doing it release all. It's just one movie, and you always see it on on the streaming charts, and I see it. Some people even commenting at me on there how like, oh, but it's not in the top 10 list for the overall charts. I'm like, it's a movie. You're making a movie and comparing it with episodes of Bridgerton that has 3 full seasons. Yeah, that's not going to be the same.
Context matters. Context matters, and that's the whole thing, you know. Exactly, Seymour. Exactly. It's wild. Absolutely wild. Yeah.
Also, I think Star Wars will go get a turnaround with the new Mandalorian movie.
Yeah, and that's a great point because Mando and Grogu, like the Grogu element of that franchise, it really, really resonates with the normies. Like I know people at my work when Mandalorian season 1, season 2 came out, I know people at my work that never watched a minute of Star Wars in their life, and they were hooked on the whole Mando series because they like Grogu kind of brings them in, and then then once they're in, they get kind of hooked because it is cool. Like Mandalorian is a cool story, you know what I'm saying? So I think you're right, Seymour. I think the normies are going to flock to that thing. Filoni is heavily involved. I think so is Favreau. I think it's gonna be good. I absolutely think it's gonna be good.
And the number one thing I complain about Star Wars, and a lot of people in the DMs who I talk to, is that the Star Wars series feels like a streaming movie that got stretched out.
Right.
And right now, and I think this is the case, is when Bob Iger came in, and they're like, we have to focus on quality. I think that making a movie instead of another season, put all that budget you would have made in producing a series into a movie, same budget. You know how great that movie is going to be compared to what it would have been if it was just a series.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the same route that they did with Moana. Moana was going to be a direct Disney Plus series, and they thought, you know what, this is too good. It has to be a theatrical feature. And it's like, watch the amount that's going to come in for that movie.
Well, and then you get to pull from the money tree twice, basically, when you make it a movie, right? So if you make Moana 2 a movie, you get the box office, which is going to be huge, and then you get another lump of cash when it goes on the streaming service, and people use the movie as a digital babysitter, and it's on repeat all day long, and it's number one for 6 months. You know what I'm saying? So they win both ways, where if it goes directly to the streaming service without going to theaters, you only get the Disney Plus money,
and also, I just wanted to mention, there's a theory going around on X with Disney where, like, I spoke to a lot of people in the DMs where Disney Plus is actually good for sequels, because if you're watching, let's say for parents, right? They, how interest rates are gone up, right? Inflation, everything, right? Costs. They're looking at costs. So that there is some contribute to that for why some of the movie sales tickets are down. But there was a theory where like Inside Out 2 is doing tremendous because the parents can go on Disney Plus, they can watch Inside Out, see it's a great movie. Oh, it's a sequel? Okay, we already reviewed the original one. We can go and see it. And I have a feeling that's what's going to happen with The Mandalorian, Moana. They can see that already, the original ones, on Disney Plus, and then when they see it, oh, it's actually pretty good. They already have that review in place in their mind, and they're going to go see it in the movie theaters.
And Seymour, you brought up a great point. Speaking of the DMs, we talk a lot about this kind of stuff. And you brought up a great point maybe like a week or so ago, I believe, where you said the Inside Out 2 numbers kind of proves, right, that this boycott of the Disney brand that we're hearing from a lot of like maybe more conservative sides, right, saying like people abandon the Disney brand because everything's woke and they don't trust the product. The huge success of Inside Out 2 kind of shows that, look, either that wasn't the case or it wasn't the case in big numbers, because you don't go from we don't trust the Disney brand and we have to pre-screen and watch everything first to like, boom, Inside Out 2 is making $1 billion plus. You know what I'm saying? If you want to kind of elaborate on that. I remember you said like about a week ago.
I don't believe any of the brand damage that I'm hearing, because the numbers don't make sense. The numbers don't add up, right? How do you go from being woke disaster and then instantly become the #1 animated movie in the world of all time? What? I don't understand that. And like there's a lot of contribute issues of why a movie would have done well, right? It could have been because people don't want to go out and see a movie anymore, so they stay at home, watch streaming, or maybe the movie is not that great. There's many issues, the Marvel wasn't that good. I didn't think it was that good. I thought it was mediocre. I didn't think the plot line was, contributes to the overall MCU. And, the ticket sales represented that.
Right, exactly. And then now you have Deadpool and Wolverine, which you can do banger numbers. And it's like, so when you put a product out there that people want to see, they'll go to it. It has not. I agree with you, Seymour. It has nothing to do, or very, very little to do with this kind of like this brand damage sort of thing, this theory, because we've seen it. We are seeing it in real time. Audience turn on a dime. When it's something they want, they go to it. Inside Out 2, perfect example. MCU right now, like you were saying, Seymour, has been kind of struggling. Deadpool, Wolverine comes out, boom, turned on a dime, a huge hit. So,
and also, the movies only represent around 50% of the overall revenue of the company for Disney. So when we look at the movies, and you're saying, oh, the movie Wish flopped, oh, Elemental flopped, oh, the Marvel flopped, because I hear on X, right? I'm like, but did you look at streaming? Did you look at parks? Did you look at sports? No, you did not. You looked at one sector that only represents 50% of the company, and yet all those movies were number one when they came out on Disney Plus.
Yeah, that's part of the revenue stream. That's part of the equation. Absolutely.
If there was brand damage, why are they watching it on Disney Plus and not boycotting Disney Plus? Why is it the Acolyte on like showing up on the Nielsen number charts? Like, where's this brand damage if these numbers don't represent that?
Yeah, exactly. And like I said many times before on the channel, Spider-Verse, I get it. It's a Sony movie, but the normies, the soccer mom has no idea of the Marvel Sony deal. And they took their kids in droves to see that movie, assuming it was a Disney movie. It's a Disney character, technically. It's Spider-Man. Everyone assumes Spider-Man is Disney. And people took their kids to go see Spider-Verse thinking it was a full-on Disney movie. If there was actual brand damage, they wouldn't have done that. They would have avoided that movie too, and they didn't.
They even went to see Madam Web on Netflix, and it was number one. And that was a terrible movie.
Oh shit! I didn't even see it. Did you sit through that, Seymour?
It's not as good as the actual Spider-Man movies, but
even the actors thought they were part of the MCU. They had to let them down easy. It's like,
well, that's true. Even the people in the movie thought they were part of the MCU. So what do you think the soccer mom's thinking? Like, we're taking our kid to Spider-Verse. Yeah, they think it's a Disney movie. Of course, Go ahead, Seymour. Sorry, bro.
Huh?
Oh, go ahead. I thought you were.
No. That was all. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah, but yeah, Madam Web was. Even that showed up as number one on the Netflix. But because people thought, that's superhero, right? That's MCU, right? And and it's on Netflix, and they're, where's the brand image there if the people are watching Madam Web?
Well,
yeah.
All I will say is, as far as for the amount of hours watched for Disney Plus, I do think I know what's gonna knock Moana off the pedestal there, and that's Moana 2.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Moana beating Moana. So our last and final story of the day is Ike Perlmutter. This is a courtesy of the Hollywood Reporter. Ike Perlmutter sells entire stake in Disney after the proxy fight. The ousted Marvel mogul had backed Nelson Peltz, who lost in his battle for 2 seats on the Disney board. It says here, Perlmutter, the former Marvel chairman, had banded with Peltz to try to win 2 seats on Disney's board of directors. Peltz launched his activist campaign in January and nominated himself and Jay Verzullo to be board members of Disney. Perlmutter had pledged his shares to Peltz as part of the proxy battle, and he sold all these shares. Seymour, I'll start with you, man. What does this mean? Why? Like, what does this tell us right here?
Personally, I think this is a good thing because you don't want someone like him to be in charge of so many shares. I think there was a statement of him saying that he will buy back in when the price goes down more, meaning that he doesn't believe that the stock is going to go up further. And you don't want that type of investor in the company because he didn't believe in Bob Iger and the board, right? And the whole proxy fight. He was with Nelson Peltz. And it's good because now you don't have, he had a lot of shares, right? It's the only reason why Nelson Peltz was even able to, have this proxy fight. It was because of him. And good news, if you were an investor, right? The stock has been going down month to month because of this guy, because he sold, because his stake is so big, selling month to month. I forget the date, but it makes sense why the stock has been going down because he was selling.
Interesting.
And now you're getting a gift because the stock has gone down because somebody basically paper handed and said, I don't believe in Disney anymore. I'm going to sell. And you don't want someone like that in the company where it can, influx the stock price, just because of that. So I think this is good news. You buy Disney on a discount. Like I was speaking to some people in the DMs. They're like, I'm buying Disney because you're getting a discount because somebody sold, not because the company fundamentally changed.
Right. Well, interesting. And you know what else Ike Perlmutter didn't believe in? Was Black Panther. It tells you how good this guy's instincts are, right? Unbelievable. One of Marvel's most successful movies, right?
But, yeah, what was that? The franchise brought in over 2.2 billion?
Something crazy. Yeah, it's massive.
If George Lucas sold though, then that's when you start to panic. But him, no, we don't care about him.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you. I don't want him. The reason why Peltz had as much power as he did and much influence is because he had this guy's shares.
Yeah, and also it also means that Nelson Peltz is not going to have another proxy fight because they don't have enough shares now to do that proxy fight.
Oh, that's
because your number one man that was, helping you, bringing that in, it doesn't have the shares anymore.
Yeah, because there were people, I'm telling you, the Peltz people, there were people for months saying, oh, man, he's not done yet. And I'm like, okay. Well, it looks like he's pretty done.
Yeah. On the day this was announced, this news, the Comcast stock went up. It was down 6-7%. Then it went back up to down 2% around this time that this was announced. So I find that really funny because they thought, oh, maybe he's going to invest in Comcast now instead of Disney. So the stock went up.
Interesting.
And Disney stock was flat. It went down 3% and stayed 3%.
Fascinating. What say you, Italiano? Ike Perlmutter, entire stake.
Yeah, I think he does is mutter too much. But anyway,
it's in his name.
Yeah, Perlmutter mutters. Yeah.
He's on brand.
I think honestly, that, as Seymour said, this is a great move. I feel like that he did for actually the company. That's the best thing he could have done for the company is sell his shares because he was very very detrimental in the Nelson Peltz kind of debacle of getting seats on the board and what have you, and he has this kind of vendetta out for the company and for Iger and what have you. So I just feel like to have someone to have that much control in shares, I would rather him just sell them, and it definitely solidifies the notion that it feels like that they're just kind of giving up the torch, so to speak, of how Nelson Peltz backed on. Now he is, so hopefully that they don't come back up in the equation of conversation when it comes to the board of directors and proxy and all that stuff.
Italiano, before we go, any final thoughts on anything we talked about today you want to address before we go?
I think we kind of covered everything, especially that I wanted to say. I just feel like for Disney, people need to kind of get off this hyped up grifting clicking train. That's what I'm going to call it, as far as to the fact that you can say one thing, but you're going to backtrack for another meaning for Universal, where it's you have to kind of see it all through one big optic lens. So it's, again, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Not saying that Disney, has, when they're on their highs, but they also have their lows. It's the same thing for Universal. You have the highs, you have the lows, but they have to be very careful with that because a lot of people, as we all said, Epic Universe will be epic, but I don't personally feel like this is going to be the biggest game changer in theme parks that people are saying it's going to be.
No.
As far as for the studio goes, I think this is Disney's year for the studios. And I think, honestly, with the quarterly earnings coming out August 7th, D23, August 9th through the 11th, and the fast track with Disneyland Forward and all these capital investments with the parks around the world, the cruise line. I think, honestly, as the poster shows, Disney has a very bright horizon ahead of itself.
Yeah, no, I think we're okay. I think we're okay. And you bring up a great point, George, and we talked a lot about it here on the channel today, where it's like, there's this tunnel vision with Disney, you know what I'm saying? And it's fine if you have more interest in Disney. I mean, I have more interest in Disney than I do Universal. I'll admit that.
Boy, do you.
Yeah, way more interested in Disney than Universal. But in order to, and I like Universal. I do like Universal, but I do have a Disney bias. I'm not going to shy away from that.
I do too.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is like in order to properly analyze these situations, and I think our buddy Jack from DSNY said the same thing today in a tweet, you have to look at everything. You have to look at Universal. You have to see what Warner Brothers and Paramount and all these other studios they're doing. Because if you don't, you can't diagnose the problem. Like I said, if every other studio had everything was up, and Disney's numbers were down, then okay, it's a Disney issue, right? Like what can Disney do to change this? When they're all going down, and they're all going down around the same time with these quarters and what have you, it's indicative of a larger issue, not an exclusively to Disney issue. You know what I'm saying? And that's important to understand because you need to understand what the problem is before you know how to fix it. Okay, if you just focus on Disney, and ignore everything else, you're not getting the big picture. So unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that. They just want to focus on Disney and Disney only, and they're not getting the whole entire picture. But Seymour, any thoughts before we take off today?
Yeah, it's very concerning for me, for Comcast at least. And you can see that with the PE ratio of like 9 for Comcast because the stock has been dropping. Yeah, I don't think people believe in the future for Comcast. That's usually what happens when you see a stock go down, but if not fundamentally change. But the PE is lower because the company, the people don't believe in the future. They think it's a value trap. And I'm looking at theme parks and like studios and like media, they don't justify the growth that they need in order to compete a company like Disney. I look at like 55% of the revenue is coming from that, the residential side, and that's going to go down year over year. TV is dying. Nobody's watching it. And Peacock has not been growing as much as they actually lost 500K subscribers. And that's not good and not profitable either, right? They need that's why you see them going to like rumors of South Korea of a theme park and then the UK because it's like big panic mode for them because they can't compete. Once their big revenue source goes down, what do you have, right? They don't have that flywheel yet to compete with Disney because their main revenue source is going to go down. And you need something to replace that. And if the things that are replacing that is going down, that's not good.
That's not good. You're right. So to clarify for the audience, what would you say is the main engine for Comcast that you think is sinking?
It needs to be, I look at theme parks and it's down and people say, okay, you have to wait for Epic Universe. And I'm like, that's not enough though. Because if TV is dying and you need to replace that, linear is dying and you need to replace that. That's their number 2 sources. Linear right. And the residential TV and internet. If those are going down and dying, and you're supposed to replace that with theme parks and experiences, and that's not going up, okay, Peacock not going up either. That's not good.
No,
at least Disney right now, right? They have their parks and they have their good margin, and they can, for when Disney Plus keeps growing, they can use that. And then if the studios don't work out with the films, they can fix their mistakes, what they are. And now it's working. I don't see that with this. There's no areas they can improve, right? I mean, currently there's no area that like one sector can provide with another one if they're all going down.
Yeah, I mean, they're a cable company, basically, right? I mean, they're a cable company and everyone's cord cutting. So that's a huge issue for them. You're right. And then you have the theme parks, which are supposed to offset those losses. But now even the theme parks are going down. Yeah,
and they only so theme parks for Disney represent over 30% of their business, their revenue. Here, only represent 8.6%. That's not good. I don't think Epic Universe is going to help that because you need more theme parks. You don't need, just one park, Epic Universe expansion. It's not going to resolve the issue. It could be a temporary fix, but in the long term, you have to think elsewhere. And then And they said they're going to do it really quickly, and I don't know if that's good for quality. I don't know. They need to catch up, but also not go too fast.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can run into a situation like what Warner Brothers and DC went through when they try to catch up to Marvel, and it's a quality issue. And they didn't properly set up their DC universe because they wanted to catch up, and look what happened. So Universal could fall into the same kind of trap with their theme parks trying to catch up because out of necessity, like you were saying, Seymour, they're almost panicking because their core business is not doing great. So now we have to offset that. So we need the theme parks to kind of bolster it. So they're going to go out there, they're going to build a theme park everywhere. But while you're doing that, you can hurt the quality. Yeah. You know, you can hurt the quality. So that's a scary endeavor. And these parks are huge investments. And these parks, when they fail, they fail hard. You know, I mean, when a theme park goes down, it's not like a movie failing. You know, it's a bigger deal. You know, so we'll see. Interesting conversation, George. If you could let everybody home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You could find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There he is. And down below, Mr. Seymour Duck. It's always good to have you on the show, brother. If you could let everybody home know where they can find you on social media.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you can find me at X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
There he is. Make sure you follow him on X, all financial news, Nintendo. What was the other name of that cover?
Cover Corp. So essentially, I'll be honest, it's just anime girls. Think of anime girls mixed with K-pop. That's what you get.
Oh, geez, that's all OG out of here.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That sounds fantastic.
I'm trying to understand it. I bought some shares in the company, and I still don't understand it. But it's big in Japan. You know, it's their culture, right? And now it's becoming like a worldwide fixation. So I'm like, okay, I need to learn more about this. It's growing.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, make sure you follow him on X and check it out. He does a lot of great insight and content over there. So follow him on X. I want to thank everybody for watching this episode of OG 55. What are your thoughts on the Comcast earnings, the theme park numbers, the studio side, the Ike Perlmutter thing? What are your thoughts? We would absolutely love to hear from you. And until the next time.